good players. Reno Petrocelli, and I don't know if you remember these guys, but there was about 5 or 6 that went up to the Red Sox, helping win it, and the Red Sox decided to send their big first base prospect back down to Toronto. That blocked me. I end up. I don't want to go into this, but anyway, Cincinnati was not very nice to me. But so I played another year or two, and Murtaugh got sick. I think he had a bad heart, Danny Murtaugh, and he came down and he said, "Tim, we're going to bring you up at the end of the year. We need some sticks for the pennant drive." I said, "Oh, fine, I'll help you. I have no problem." And,
this would have been Danny Murtaugh.
I didn't get called up.
To great acclaim.
I went home. I said, "That's it for me. My kids are starting to grow. I can still play in the big leagues." But I said, I don't know. My future is looking pretty dim. I didn't want to be hanging around playing AAA ball, and I packed it in. So I quit and voluntarily retired. And
well, we're going to pack it in right now. This is our halfway.
All right.
Halfway point. We're going to do some business. Our producer Eric is going to. We're going to give him a shout out. But we'll be right back with a little bit more from Tim Harkness Sr. on this edition of A Bitter Cup of Coffee, the podcast, brought to you by the Mad Radio Network. We'll be right back, folks.
Okay. Well, this first half of Mad Radio Network this week is brought to you by Major League Adventures at MajorLeagueAdventures.com, run by the great Tom Bruno, who will be a future guest. So that's for MajorLeagueAdventures.com. You have guided pheasant hunting in Lake Ohio, Lake Sharp, and guided walleye fishing. So that's run by the great Tom Bruno, who will be a guest on our show in a few weeks. And back to you guys.
All right, so back to us, and thank you for the quick shout-out, Eric. But so, Tim, we're now at the point where you decided to pack it in because obviously you didn't want to hang around AAA, and we all know that the money back then for guys playing in AAA was not so good. So you wanted to support your family. What were your plans, and what did you eventually do in your next phase of your life? Because you're still a young guy in your 20s. You're not an old retiring guy.
I was almost 30. But, the thing was, I wanted to, so I went back to school and I learned, I went into, I ended up running my own business. I had a packing, crating business. I was doing shipments all over the world. And, I did that for many years. And then my wife took that over, and I went into becoming a scout. Luckily, I knew what I wanted to do outside of baseball, but I've never got that game. Now it's out of my system totally, but that was a struggle. Like any young professional athlete, the hardest thing is the adjustment, and it's not the game. It's just the way of life. That you lead there, you think it's going to last forever, and it does not. And so luckily I fell into something I enjoyed, made a decent living with it, and we had a pretty good life. So I'll leave it like that. My daughter lives in Michigan and with her husband, and so I spent a lot of time there or down in Florida. I did scout for about 10 years for San Diego Padres. And I covered Eastern Canada for them, and it was lots of fun and lots of good kids. I wish they would have listened to me more because, I had Justin Morneau and a few others that their priorities were elsewhere. So anyway, it was a good experience, and I'm glad I did that. So. There's lots of good young kids coming out of this country, as you probably can see now, and lots of good boys. I don't know. I've lost contact in the last couple of years, but, the interest in baseball is pretty high here. But unfortunately for young kids, they've got the families have got to spend a lot of money to get them exposed to the proper tutelage and playing against the good opposition, so they can advance their careers, because just hanging around playing in Sandlot ball around here is not conducive to a pro career. You've got to spend money and join these elite teams, they call them, and they travel extensively, through
Tim, would you equate that to, like, let's say, for example, an American kid, if he's good in hockey, he's got to go to Canada and play junior, so like a Canadian kid who's good at baseball has to come to the States to play?
Yeah, and I mean, that used to be true, but nowadays, the schooling, these kids now, they get what this junior league is doing in this country now is, if you say you played 3 years at junior before you turn pro, those 3 years are credited. They give you 3 years of schooling at some university. Your costs are covered by that. So that's to fight off the opposition, where most of the real good players now are coming out of the University of Michigan, University of Denver, Boston College, University of, et cetera, wherever they play hockey, Minnesota. And they're getting a good education. The education is free. And if they're really good, they can turn pro, pro. Some of them get right to the big leagues. But there are just as many good American kids coming out to play pro hockey now as there is are Canadians. So that is a fact. So,
Well, here's a fact that the listeners of this podcast are only too well acquainted with. Since 1992, revenue in baseball has gone up 325%.
Right.
The minimum valuation for a team like the Marlins, obviously for the Dodgers or for the Yankees, it'd be higher.
Right.
The minimum valuation is up 19% since 2016 to at least $1.54 billion. Major League Baseball, by its own acknowledgement, has made $500 million the past 2 years. The average salary is up to $4.4 million, and the pension and welfare benefit fund of the union, of the Major League Baseball Players Association, is more than $2.8 billion. Those
Right.
are the facts. They are undeniable. And yet a man such as yourself, because this is really the reason why we're fighting this battle, Marc and myself, a man such as yourself only gets, in case anyone's forgotten, $625 for every 43 game days of service that he has accrued on a major league roster. And most shockingly, because you told us off camera, you were injured a lot, and
I was.
You don't get your health insurance for Major League Baseball. Today, all you have to do is ride the pines for one game day. You don't even have to take a glove out to the field. You don't have to swing a bat. You just have to be the 25th man on that bench, and you are eligible to buy in to the premier health insurance plan.
Right.
And I know a man such as yourself who, basically you told us off camera, you had a good business career in the private sector, but, you got hurt a lot. And
unfortunately,
I'm sure health insurance would have come in handy for you.
Yeah, I must tell you, though, in this country we have, what they call socialized medicine, good or bad, and it's, we do have that for everyone. It's not for every country, and but anyway, we don't have to worry about, those kind of things. I know how expensive it is in the States, because my daughter lives in Michigan, but thankfully we do have some kind of system here that seems to work. And
now, Tim, the president, not the executive director, but the president of the union is your newest outfielder, the Toronto Blue Jay Curtis Granderson is actually the president of the union. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but,
right.
You have, or at least your son has told me ad nauseum plenty of times that this has been a source of consternation to you. You're not pleading poverty, but you are not getting a pension when that stipend, when that blood money that you're receiving every February,
exactly.
when you go, that stipend goes with you. So if you had Curtis Granderson, in front of you,
right,
talking like we are, what would you say to him?
That'd be a good question, but well, truthfully, I as an old guy, I don't know how much artillery I can bring to the table, but I think anybody that's alive who has played in the major leagues and given their life to that game, given everything they had to it, and unfortunately, some have got up there for a very short time, some a little bit longer, and in my instance, because of injuries, I know they moved me along, but that's all right. I don't have any. I'm not bitter about this at all. I just think I'm not envious of whatever these guys are making. That's terrific, but Curtis Granderson, I think there ought to be some justification before we're all gone. That I think the game should kick back something to those guys that went before. We helped to draw millions of people into the ballparks, and now we're just shunted aside because we're old and almost non-existent as far as they're concerned. But they whatever they're enjoying
here
today is they're enjoying the fruits of our labors. And
my broadcasting partner, my buddy, Mr. Weiss, practically from the moment we met, has always said that this is ridiculous that your service in the minors isn't being credited.
Right.
I'll go as far as saying, as a scout, what are you, a bird dog scout, or you were a bird dog scout?
No, I was actually full time, but
okay. But
no,
that's
I wasn't. I didn't
credited.
bird dog. I wouldn't do that kind of stuff. But I had sign abilities and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's beside the point. That's but I enjoyed doing that, and I did work for the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. They have a pretty good organization called the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame, but which I'm disillusioned about it now because instead of, I think the game anyway. Let's not go into that one, but I left them. I had a pretty good job with them, but I left them to go scouting with San Diego because I thought they got off track there a little bit, but that's another story. But anyway, I'm not bitter about it, but I'm looking at these guys, and as a young boy, I saw some of the greatest infielders I think I've ever seen, and I not because I was a young boy and was impressionable, but I saw guys come out of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and like blue collar towns. And all they did, they had no television, no computers, all they had was a little bit of radio, but kids get out in the parks and play, and they hone their skills, and they learn. It's an eye and hand, very, very demanding game called baseball, and you must. That's why these kids in the islands are practicing day and night, and when they get up there, they're doing the job now. Where I think in the United States and this country we're not producing the players that they are out of those islands now.
I definitely agree with you, Tim. I'm going to throw it over to Eric. He's off camera, our producer, but we have people on Facebook Live who are actually watching the show, and we have a question from one of our listeners. So, Eric, you want to introduce that?
Yeah, sure. So we have a question from Mike Menino, and it's actually sort of a segue into what you're saying with the kids to get out there. But he wanted to know if you were able to enjoy the game today with all the changes, with the time of game, pitch counts, strikeouts by batters, the shift, no more small ball. How would you feel about the game now if you were playing?